Welcome to Impact. Remember, in this video series, we are interviewing people who are making an impact in the world and in the world that God put them in. Today, we're talking to Dave Farmer. Dave, thank you for coming in to Impact. We're really excited to talk to you about how you guys went out into the mountains of North Carolina where nobody else was, so you could go and not just look for bodies, but help those who were suffering be in the hands and the feet of Jesus. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The impact.
Living in a memory.
Welcome in. Today we have my friend Dave Farmer, who was one of the guys leading a group up in the hurricane zone for Hurricane Helene. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now tell everybody where you were, what you guys saw, and what you did.
Well, we started off trying to desperately find a place to stay. Hotels were completely almost non-existent.
Yeah.
They were either booked or flooded. Our intent was to head to the least reached area. So we wanted to get to the outer banks of the storm versus the central, like Asheville and areas where we knew there'd be a lot of people that would show up and a lot of hands and feet.
Right.
So we started out in Morgantown. Morgantown is it's a small area outside of Asheville. It's about an hour and a half away from Nashville, and they had 15 feet flood. I mean,
15-foot flood waters,
literally above the top of the peak of the mobile homes that we cleaned out. So we did a couple mud outs. There was literally saturated. All the drywall had to come out, get it down to the bare bones, and
Sure.
dry it out. And so when we finished that, we started kind of asking questions of, where are the areas that really need us and really haven't had much assistance. So I met with a local pastor who really he had his hand on the pulse of what was really happening in the mountains. So we headed to the Northwest Mountains into an area called Barbersville. And Barbersville was just annihilated. I mean, and they didn't expect anything. I literally watched a video that the owner of the home, she was outside watching her home literally just vanish as the floodwaters just took the entire home and everything they owned. You can actually even hear her in the background crying, "Oh my God, oh my God."
Now we have that video.
Yes.
Yeah, and we will show it right now.
Oh my God! Oh my God! That's everything. Oh my God! Take it.
So when we first pulled into this area, we were kind of shocked. I mean, that there wasn't really any relief. There was no Red Cross, there was no FEMA, there was no government, there was no search and rescue, there was nothing.
Wow.
The amazing thing was it was believers locking arms and saying, "You know what? We don't need the government. We can do this."
Right.
And the biggest problem was the roads were completely destroyed. I mean, literally, there were places where 60 feet of asphalt was washed away.
Goodness.
And it just left a big cavern. You couldn't get to the other side. It was impossible.
Wow.
And boulders that had come down from higher elevations that probably weighed 4 tons they said they literally were coming in the water, floating in the water. And when they would hit a house, the house would just explode.
Goodness.
Vehicles completely smashed as if they were in a trash compactor. Everybody in the entire town was affected. There was not a person in this area that was not affected by the flood.
Right.
We met a lady named Shirley. She had 3 feet of mud in her basement. All the mud had pushed the garage door open, and she had a drive under garage, and the entire thing was filled with mud, 3 feet high. Her great grandfather built the house. Her parents lived there. She grew up there. Then after she retired, she came back and she's living in that house. It was just amazing the people we met. We met a lieutenant retired from the military, 93 years old, served our country. For me,
Yeah,
I love
tell
our
us
vets.
that story, man. Tell us that story.
I love our vets, and to me, they're the heroes of our nation. It's
Right.
people that put their lives on the line to defend for our freedoms, to sacrifice so that we can enjoy what we enjoy freely.
Yeah.
And so when I met the son, Chris, he told me his dad was inside. I said, I really want to meet your dad. And he goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. So I walked up to the porch, and Lieutenant Bob walked out. And he's 93 years old, and I looked at him and I just said, I just want to thank you. I said, I just want to thank you for your service. Thank you that you were willing to fight and defend our freedom. And I'm living as a result of that today, that freedom.
Yeah.
And he shook my hand and he said, it was an honor for me to serve our country. And, it kind of brought a tear to my eye. And so then I asked him, I said, sir, can I pray for you? Can I just pray for you? And he said, no, I want to pray for you. And this shocked me. I was like, okay, okay, here's a guy who's, literally his garage is 150 yards downstream, just completely destroyed.
Now we have that video also.
Yes.
Yeah, watch this.
There's Papa. Say hi.
Hi there. We're in the middle of an ocean here.
Wow. They said this was going to be historic. Certainly is.
Okay, so tell us some more.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, he wants to pray for me. I'm like humbled totally humbled. And he starts praying and he's thanking the Lord for us coming.
Wow.
He's like, you've come so far to help us. You don't know us. You sacrifice your time. You've brought all of these resources to come in to help us. And I just want to pray for you. And you just start praying. I mean, he's got tears running down his face. I got tears running down my face. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
We got a tough warrior who's crying. You got this pastor who's crying. I'm like, okay, this is good. And just the most amazing man. I mean, just so humble, but so thankful that there were people that were willing to come, because literally there was nobody there. I mean, nobody showed up to help these people. These are the poor people. Most of these people have grown up in the mountains. They live off the mountains. They hunt deer. They hunt bear. They catch trout. They raise their own fruit and vegetables. He had a beautiful banana tree in his front yard, just completely obliterated.
Yeah.
But I mean, they live off of the land, literally. And so they very seldom had to go to the store for very few items.
Right.
Well, everything that they lived off of is gone. We've got a couple, Josie and Larry. Larry's 72 years old, can't read. Came to know the Lord as a result of going to the mountains to serve. But they're standing in front of their houses. The whole thing disappears, and I asked him. I said, "So, tell me, what are your biggest needs? What is it that?" She's like, "We have nothing. We've lost everything." She said, "We survive on $450 a month Social Security."
Wow.
That Larry gets, plus we live off the land. She's like, we canned everything. We grow it, we can it, and we'd sell it in town. So she said we had 160 jars of miscellaneous vegetables that they had canned. They had 130 jars of chow that they had canned. They had 150 jars of beans they had canned. So all of this stuff that was ready that they could go in town and they could sell and live, all gone.
Everything.
All of it wiped out when the house left. So when you look at the scene of this, it's beyond anything that we can think of, because it's 200 miles wide.
Yeah.
And it affected every mountainous town. Now think about this. Who in the mountains would need flood insurance?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The river that ran there, the pebbles in Weaversville, you could walk across the river and never get your feet wet.
Yeah.
You could walk on the rocks.
Right.
Well, when it came through, it literally diverted the river, and it left a swash of nothing, a gorge that is about 25 feet wide and 4 feet deep.
Goodness.
And there's nothing in it. It sucked the water out of major rivers to where literally they just look like a pile of mud. There's nothing there. And, sad reality is that, in the beginning of storm, and I've been in a lot of these hurricanes, Houston, Florida, And so as a disaster relief chaplain, my heart is to go in and to minister to these hurting people. And when we got to Josie and Larry, we realized there was a road just beside where they were standing. And I asked, I said, what is up that road? They said, there's other people. There's people we haven't heard from. We don't know what's happened to them. No one's been able to get up there yet because of the amount of trees. So the swash of trees is just massive. So we're like, we need chainsaws. We need men to operate chainsaws. We need people that have bobcats and heavy equipment that can come in and help move this stuff, because what we know is the latest total is that there are 1,412 people missing.
Up in that area.
That are missing. Yeah, that we don't know missing as in
Right.
they're alive and just don't have a way to use phone, because the cell service is very spotty. Electricity still not restored in some places. Many people still don't have water. So you think about, you can't even flush your toilet.
Yeah.
And so
Well, much less something to drink.
something to drink. I mean, and those areas you can't get to. So what we know is this. There was a video done on YouTube by a lady who was in that in Red Hill area, and she said when it first passed, she said they went and they marked bodies. They marked over 100 bodies so that they'd be easily found, and they'd be able to retrieve these bodies in order to notify families of, hey, here's your loved one, and all of the markers were moved. They're gone. So I don't know where the bodies are. She said there are bodies in trees, bodies under trailers. There are parts like limbs, like arms and legs. And you think about this from like putting it in perspective. It's like a 1 to 3, if you had to categorize it, would be like, there's minor water. There's a little water in the house. It's very minimal. A 5 to 7 is, there's 3 feet of water and it needs to be removed, the sheetrock, everything all up to 4 foot. And there typically your vehicles are gone. And most of these areas are 5 to 7s. I mean, that we've been in. All their vehicles were flooded. They didn't expect this water to come. They didn't expect any of this.
And they had no warning.
None.
Now, the other thing too, Dave, is there were actually tornadoes in the mountains.
Tornadoes that
doesn't happen.
No.
I mean, you don't see tornadoes in hurricanes really much at all, but this one carried tornadoes and everything else in it. Just a complete freak.
It even started that in Florida.
Yeah.
If you remember the first day before the hurricane even hit the land, they had 25 tornadoes in Florida before the hurricane ever arrived.
Now, you guys are going back up there, correct? And when are you? Now, you're going back up there still to look for bodies too. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the 7 to 9 zone is the area that we're going to focus on when we go back. We're going to take a bunch of chainsaws.
Now, you wore a brand new chainsaw in a week.
Yeah, it didn't last 2 days. I mean, just
didn't last 2 days.
2 days. Just completely wore out.
Brand new chainsaw.
Yeah, and so we're gonna do our best to cut a pathway through. I mean, we may end up taking, they were backpacking mules into the areas to bring food and resources. So we may
and no FEMA, no Red Cross, nobody's there to help.
No, we didn't see. I saw one FEMA guy. He pulled up in a $115,000 brand new Jeep Wagoneer.
Yeah,
I was like, he walked by, he took a picture, he looked around, and he left. And I was like,
really?
Seriously? This is the assistance? And nobody never came back. And I've asked, and I said, hey, has anyone else been here? The Red Cross came finally right as we were leaving the last 2 days, and they were making lunches, for workers and people that could, but they weren't going up into the mountains. They weren't, they set up basically at the base of the mountain, and they supplied lunches for people that are working and people that could come and get the lunch.
Right.
But I met so many people that are just, they don't know what to do. Literally, they've lost everything. They're just kind of sitting there going, what do I do? What do I do?
So this is ongoing. Guys, even though your life has moved on, their life has not, and they're still going through it.
And sadly, in the next 2 weeks, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Winter's here.
Yeah.
They're already in fall.
Yeah.
It snowed for the very first time last night. So they've already had a trace of snow. So you have to think, okay, they're surviving on propane. Their propane tanks were obliterated. They're gone. They don't have them anymore. And, they have the larger ones so that they can put a fairly good supply of propane in there to last for several months,
right?
At least through the winter course. They're gone. They don't have them. So they have no form of heat. So part of our mission now is getting propane heaters, is getting propane, and even the small thermal bottles, the temporary ones that you can portably take with you, hand heaters.
Are you able to access that stuff now? Because, I mean, trying to get that type of equipment and get it up there, how are you going to do that? And guys, by the way, we're not talking about 30, 40, 50 people. We're talking about thousands of people.
Thousands,
right?
Yes. And you got to consider I'm explaining about one town.
Yeah.
Seminole was obliterated as well. I mean, every town in that mountainous region was literally destroyed.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those places, I don't know if they'll ever recover. I don't know that they'll be able to recover. But everyone was affected, every home. It wasn't like, a couple houses out here in the street and it bypassed us. It hit everybody. You either got flooded or, a huge boulder smashed your house and took the corner off of one of your rooms, or it just flooded and took the whole entire property.
Right.
And, there's so many of these towns we haven't got to yet that nobody's got to yet. And that's our mission. Our mission is to get in there, and we're going to go to the 7 to 9 zones and find out, okay, nobody's been here yet. What's happening with these people? I mean, we came upon one girl. She was stuck in her house. She couldn't get out. The tree had literally crushed their house. She was stuck in a corner. She couldn't get out of the house. She was just sitting in there weeping. And there's no telling how many more people are stuck in a house with no way to communicate and no way to get off the mountain.
Now, is there a way for those that watch this video, is there a way for them to get something to you guys?
They can. I have, you can get me on Venmo, David Farmer, 678-602-1053. You can give that way. You can send a check to Slaves to Freedom. It's a nonprofit that we operate.
Yeah. So guys, by the way, Dave has a ministry that rescues young boys and girls from sexual slavery as well. Now, we're going to get into that at another time, but just so you know, this guy's ministry is all about helping those that are oppressed or those that are being sex trafficked all over the world. I mean, some of the stories you have that you've told me about the situations you guys have been in with sex traffickers and rescuing kids is just unbelievable. And I want to save that for another day because that's got to be another podcast. But in this case, when are you guys going back?
Within the next 5 days.
In the next 5 days.
It's literally, we at this point we're gathering resources, we're raising funds, and turning around and going right back because again, the need is so large and time is everything, because those people that are still unaccounted for, it may be a situation where, they're to the point of perishing.
Right.
And we need to get them, and we need to get them off of the mountain and get them to a place where someone can give them medical attention.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's about those survivors that are still out there that nobody's got to yet. A couple search and rescue teams showed up. They were there for 15 minutes. They let the dogs walk around, and then they left. And and I hate to say it, but it's more of a show than it is anything. I mean, when the president gets on a helicopter and they load it all full of all kinds of resources that they're going to fly into the affected area, and then once the video's over, they cut it, they take all the supplies off, and he leaves in the helicopter.
Right.
And people saw this.
Yeah.
And so they're mad. I mean, people in these areas they're irate. Again, we can fund a war in Ukraine, but we can't help the people who have been blindsided by a natural disaster that nobody in their world would have thought they ever needed flood insurance in a mountain.
Yeah, not like that.
I mean, they're not living on a river. They were living by a creek.
Yeah.
And, in some cases, the waves were 40 feet high because the houses were literally in a valley.
Yeah.
And so they were in the center of this thing, and the water reached above the peak of their house. And it's beyond our comprehension. I mean,
Sure.
I've walked in it, I've looked at it, I've talked to these people, and I'm telling you, the pictures and the videos do not truly tell the story.
Right.
And my biggest concern and my biggest worry is that in 2 weeks, the number of people that are helping is going to dwindle. It always does. I've seen it in every natural disaster I've ever gone to, whether it was in Puerto Rico, whether it was in Houston, whether it was in Florida with hurricanes. I've seen it every time. It's like, well, when it first starts, everybody's on the scene, and everybody wants to have their, their name known and their faces shown. And it's like, okay, but the problems aren't solved in a week. These people are going to be dealing with this for months and possibly years.
Yeah.
To recover and regain everything that they've lost.
Right.
But again, the most important thing is life. And on top of that, as a pastor, it's the soul of men.
Yeah.
We desperately want to make sure that these people know who Christ is,
Right.
Because the reality is that, and I've asked this question 100 times in the past week.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. I know you were here. You've watched it. You have video. You have pictures of this horrible, horrible tragedy that came to your basically your front door. And I've asked this question: what happens? What happens if you don't survive it?
Yeah.
And and the answer is like, well, I guess I die. Okay, and then what?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, where do you go?
Yeah.
And it's the perfect opportunity. And for me, this is where the church needs to be engaging.
Yeah.
We don't need to be just talking about it. We don't need to just be praying about it. Prayer is great, but prayer is not a substitute for obedience.
Right.
The reality is that we need to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We need to get up, get out, and go and do the work that God has called us to do. And that's really where we are.
Right.
In the middle of all this, where would the Lord be?
Yeah.
Where would the disciples be? They would be right in the midst of the pain and the suffering, and they would be there offering hope to those who are hopeless.
Yeah.
And help to those who are helpless. And you always think about, the Lord said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you went to visit me. And I said, well, Lord, when did we do all these things? Well, as many times you did the least of these, you did it unto me.
Right.
That right there summarizes and really is for me, is the driving point.
Yeah.
Is we're doing this unto the Lord. And pastors in some of the local churches are grouping together, and it is amazing to watch. They're all different denominations, some Baptist, some Presbyterian, some Methodist, but they're being vitally used to bring hope to those who have no hope. And it's really an awesome thing to see, because the church should be the one doing this, not the government. We should have never allowed the government to take over the role of responsibility of the church. The early church did what? They sold what they had, so they gave to those who had need. Yeah. And they were steadfast about the apostles' doctrines and truth, and literally they went and they added to church to the souls daily, every day. They weren't just talking about ministry; they were living it out. And so for me, this is it. This is what we're supposed to do as believers. We're supposed to go to those who believe, who don't believe. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their economic status is, and unfortunately, we are finding ourselves engulfed in the mountains of the poorest people in North Carolina. And those are the people that I feel like the Lord is telling us, don't forget these. These are the ones that are left behind. And you've never seen people so grateful, so thankful. I mean, they just break into tears, and they're just like, you came all the way here from Georgia? Yeah. And my ministry partner came from South Dakota. No. So that really shocks them. They're like, where is South Dakota? It's like, they're like all the way from South Dakota. So, and, so they're just so absolutely grateful. Yeah. And that's the amazing thing is, we're just seeing the Lord do incredible things. People are coming to faith. We're seeing people's hope restored. We're seeing, the people realize that they do matter, and I've always said that every person we lock eyes with matters to God. They got to matter to us. Yeah. Regardless of their politics, regardless of their, circumstance or situation, the way they live, they may not be living the way that we think they should be. But you know what? Unless they know Christ, how else are they supposed to live? Oh yeah. That's exactly. And we get mad. We get mad. We're like, oh, the way they're living, the way they vote, the way they think, and it's like, hello. Yeah. That's what they're supposed to.
Yeah, exactly right. They're fulfilling their job description.
Yeah, it's not like they can live any different. Yeah, and so for us, we're not dividing. We're not looking at let's go up and minister all the Christians.
You're just looking to help.
Yeah,
anybody. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Human suffering is human suffering. So So here's what I'm going to do. If you look in the description, you will find where you can give to help if you'd like to. And guys, I would really encourage you, maybe you can't get out there, but you can give something. Maybe you can buy a chainsaw or a part of it, you can
right.
give towards buying a chainsaw. Thank you so much for joining us.
The impact.
Living in a memory.